Take her up.
There we go.
Okay, I'll start over. I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for May 18th, 2020 to order. Will the clerk please?
Mrs. Cappellini,
Here.
Mr. Fry,
Here.
Mr.
Here.
McCann,
Here.
Mr. Richardson,
Here.
Ms. Stowe, Mrs. Westfall.
Here.
All 7 members are present, with 4 of us in person and 3 of us via Zoom, but a quorum does exist. We'll move on to I will state there are no visitors in the house tonight. We do have staff members sitting out there. With that, let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. This meeting led by Mrs. Westfall.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions to the agenda. I've got a couple changes to mark down. I would like to move agenda item 17A2, which is the TARDA Committee of the Whole meeting we just had, up to agenda item 4A, to see if council would like to take any action on that tonight while Mr. Woodcock is still with us. I've also been informed that agenda item 13 off of the agenda tonight, and we will bring it back for you. Mrs. Westfall.
Mr. Mayor, we did, no, I think you addressed it. Mayor.
Any additional items from members of City Council? Hearing none. Mr. Sanford?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer is in the house, as is Mr. Sanford. Chief Snorer is here.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aller is here.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
They're not on camera. They are sitting out in the green seats. And Mrs. Brining is over there.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
All right. If there's no changes, is there a motion to approve the amended?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda for this evening's meeting is approved. Moving on to agenda item 4, which is approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting on May the 4th. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the City Council meeting held Monday, May 4th, 2020, as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and submitted to approve the meeting minutes as submitted for our May 4th, 2020 meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Item 4A, which is discussion or report of the Committee of the Whole meeting held tonight discussing Ordinance 13-2020 and the TARDA presentation. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we did have a Committee of the Whole meeting tonight on May 18th, 2020, beginning. And the topic was proposed resolution number 13-2020 about a TARDA presentation. Our primary focus for this meeting was to have it open and available for public comment. All members of City Council were present. Many members of City Administration were present. Also, we had guests Danny Woodcock from TARDA, who is the chairman of the board, and Russell Mills from Bowling Green State University. They were here to respond to questions and to make a few presentations. Dr. Mills from Bowling Green presented a PowerPoint that we had all received copies of in advance to the 2019 Impact Analysis Study for TARDA. And this PowerPoint really focused on addressing the economic impact of TARDA operations on the service region. So it was quite informative. And then Mr. Woodcock came along and showed us a PowerPoint, some more of the vision and opportunities that they are anticipating will be available as the TARDA, forward with its next plans. So with that, there were no real questions, and we moved to adjourn the meeting at 7:20.
With that, you'll find at the back of your council packets 17A2A, which is Resolution 13-2020, which Mrs. Brining has been amended per Mr. Hanem's proposed changes. That was shared with TARDA, who shared it with their legal counsel, and do not have the effectiveness of this resolution as a result of the changes. What they is the permission to add Lucas County as a member of TARDA, and this resolution does accomplish that. If you may, Danny, if you could turn your microphone back on, can you give us an update about where you stand with the other communities right now?
Certainly, thank you. We have done our first round of reading at, I believe, all member municipalities with the exception of Waterville. Kim and Laura tonight are in Maumee. Tomorrow we will visit your neighbors, Sylvania Township, again for the second time. Ottawa Hills has already voted to pass this piece of legislation. We believe the city of Toledo will be taking action on it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brining, there is no legal reason to have 3 readings. We did a first reading at the last council meeting so that we could have this committee of the whole and invite public comment and get a few questions answered. My recommendation, if council is satisfied, that you proceed with modified resolution 13-2020 tonight, or we can just have a second reading. That is a council decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think we ought to just go ahead and get this done tonight. I appreciate the TARDA acceptance of the amendment, and I think we're ready to let TARDA have their shot at the voters. So,
All right. Mrs. Westfall.
I do think, Mr. Mayor, that we do have support among council members, so I will read the legislation and waive that 3rd reading. So I'd like to introduce the 2nd reading of resolution number 13-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I will read by title only. A resolution amending the resolutions previously adopted, which created the Toledo Area Regional Transit Authority, TARDA, by 1, adding Lucas County as a member of TARDA, 2, eliminating TARDA's 2.5 mil property taxes and substituting a 0.5% sales and use tax, 3, allocating monies from the sales and use tax collected to TARDA to directly fund its operations, and allocate monies from the sales and use tax collected to other local governmental entities for the installation, maintenance, and improvement of mass transit-related infrastructure, provided that such changes are contingent upon voter approval of the new TARDA funding system at the November 3rd, 2020 general election, waiving the 3rd reading and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the 3rd reading be waived and that resolution 13-2020 be approved as an read by title only. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of resolution number 13-2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of resolution 13-2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 13-2020 is approved. Thank you. Thank you for your help, Mr. Woodcock, and best wishes.
Thank you all very much.
With that, let's go on to our every 2-week COVID update for you. Events seem to move pretty fast on this. It was a lot of changes for the city to shut down and go on to its platooning system. Are back at full strength in the city departments. City Hall remains locked, but is open. We are open to meeting with citizens as necessary. to resolve any issues or problems. We meet with them outside for water applications or for zoning permits, anything like that. And I have, in the mayor's office, not receiving any complaints from our residents as a result of that, nor am I getting complaints from our employees about our operations at the moment. We are trying to comply with DeWine's directives as we move forward. I'm sure you're all aware that Friday evening, the Dora was reopened downtown. They took a bike ride through downtown on Friday, and it was pretty popular. I can tell you I was a little dismayed with the lack of social distancing, and I'm not sure I saw a single face mask on anybody standing outside downtown. There were a lot of people in the mini park. I assume nobody was holding a Dora cup. I couldn't really tell, but there were a lot of happy people in the mini park. The inside the 5 outside patio was packed as it should be. And things seem to be waking up in our community again. The Chamber of Commerce is helping our businesses or its member businesses reopen by making PPE kits available for its members to purchase, signs that could be posted on their doors saying that requirements of the state of Ohio's reopening provisions. There will be issues as we go through this, and we're going to talk about them. As I'm going to let our department heads go ahead, and then you'll see next in the agenda discussion and a temporary street closure discussion. But at first, I'd like to go ahead and let Chief Snorris tell you where he's at. He'll be making a change here at the end of the month with his personnel. Chief's got to come around and be on camera.
Is this right? Normal place?
There's the camera. That would be fine.
Okay.
You seen there a mic?
Does this mic work or? Yeah.
Can you hear the chief?
Can you hear me? Okay. So, not a whole lot new has transpired as far as the police department. Between the 29th and June 1st, 29th of this month and June 1st, we will have all of our people back on a regular schedule. We did on our 3 on 3 off temporary schedule for a couple of weeks longer than the rest of the city, just to see how things would step back down for manpower, given the size of the police department and our 24/7 operations. If we were to lose a few officers, it would drastically affect our operations. So we wanted to try to limit the exposure as much as possible. But all signs are indicating we should be able to be back to our regular schedule here very soon. As far as calls for service, that sort of thing, traffic accidents are still down. Most things are down across the board. We did notice more activity downtown, but we don't have any reported issues. So we did have one officer retire. Today was his last day. I think his official last day on the books is
Officer Pooley.
Officer Kevin Pooley was our dare. His last assignment here was dare officer. 28 years of service, so he has decided to retire. So that's another consideration we're keeping in mind. We still have one officer who's on light duty, Officer Russell Hoff, who was injured in an accident. His car was struck by a motorist about 3.5 weeks ago. He's hoping to return to full duty in another week or two. We're working with his doctor to make sure that his return to work is appropriate. So we are a couple officers down right now, and so we're being very careful about exposure.
No officers are being isolated or quarantined or have been reported to be
no one's in quarantine or
COVID-19.
isolation right now.
I believe I saw in the local media that Toledo has one officer that's been identified as positive.
Correct.
Our fire department, I'm not aware of any of them. Actually, there have been a lot of people isolated,
Right.
but not much in the way of cases. So.
Right. Sylvania Township had one officer who had tested positive, but that was at least 3 weeks ago. I believe he's recovered.
Okay.
So,
any questions for the chief?
Yeah, Chief.
Yes.
Is there any plans to do any more hiring of officers this summer or on the horizon at all?
we're trying to establish a list. There'll be something coming out soon about our new, we've tried to enhance some of our recruitment. And we're hoping in the next 30 days to actually post a list to the National Testing Network, which is
Okay. And that's to replace the retiring off.
and just to establish a list. We usually keep a list available, especially the last 10 years. The number of people who apply is dramatically lower than it used to be. So we try to always have a standing list once the list expires, or if we reach the point where there's no candidates left on the list that they're liable to hire. So we are pursuing that actively at this time.
Great. Thank you.
The fire department reported to me today that they are all hard to recruit firefighters. They lose them, but they have a bunch apparently that are eligible for retirement in the next few years, and people are not choosing firefighting or police service necessarily as much as they did in the past.
Correct.
So the new word is recruiting.
Exactly. We're really
And
reaching
we're
out to
thinking about changing our policies to hire somebody that hasn't gone through the police academy yet,
Yes.
which would be a new step for us.
It is. Okay.
All right, Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on now to our Public Safety and Service Director and our liaison with the Lucas County Emergency Operations Office, Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add on a little bit to what the chief mentioned in response to the question, we had one officer that retired, and we actually have about 6 or 7 more that are eligible to retire. They could walk in tomorrow and say I'm retired. So without developing that list, and that obviously
So that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
If 7 in the next month or something else, yeah. That would
We're
be,
not anticipating that.
Yeah.
None of them have indicated that they're considering it, but the potential is there. So regarding coronavirus issues, everybody is back to work 5 days a week and coming in the office. If we are around other people in close distance, then we're wearing a mask. Most of the time we are separated. In our office, the 6-foot separation is not that difficult to be able to maintain. So most of the time it's not an issue, but you do sometimes have to walk through certain areas and that kind of stuff. Employees are actually happy to be back. For the most part, I'm sure there are some that aren't, but for the most part, they had enough of the every other day mechanism and are happy to be back on a full-time basis. As the mayor indicated, we're not catching any phone calls from the general public as to problems that are going on or things we're not being serviced or something like that. So I credit the staff and the field staff, office staff for handling those things and making sure that people were being provided the services that we've always provided. It was done in a different manner, but we were able to get it accomplished. And I don't feel that we dropped off our level of service to the public in any way. A couple things that we did end up having to cancel and/or postpone, I should say postpone, is the unlimited pickup that was originally scheduled for the first week in May, and then the shred day that was originally scheduled for mid-April on a Saturday. We are in the process of getting both of those items rescheduled. The unlimited pickup, we will have a notice. We hope to have a notice on the utility bills that go out this month. So the first part of June, everybody should get notice on when that's rescheduled. We have it pretty well locked in, but I don't want to put that out there yet in case something doesn't go as planned with Republic. But we're 99% sure that we've got a rescheduled date for that. So. And then shred day, we're working on that one. That one's actually probably going to be a little later. That might be in like the early fall for a reschedule on that. But we do plan on having that rather than not wanting to go. That's a popular event. That's the company that comes in for that. It's their largest collection. We have a number of cars that we channel through there in a day is unbelievable. So those will be rescheduled. We're have our eyes and ears open for masks and disinfectants and things of that nature. There are several organizations and associations that are, grouping the mask provisions as a whole. Ohio EPA has put several out for water and wastewater operators. We pulled some of those from the EOC. We plan on we're hopeful that we'll get another supply from the county, who is distributing some masks that they received from the state. And then we have some on order that we have on order from our soap and paper towel vendor. So if I can get them, I'm getting them. Take a look at what all the different options are. There are hundreds of thousands of different types of masks out there. And, some people are going to like this kind, some people are going to like that kind of stuff. So if this is going to be an ongoing issue, we want to make it as comfortable as possible if we have to. So if we can get them, I'm getting them, and that way we can see what kind of it is. But all in all, I think things have gone well. But I'm glad we're getting back to somewhat normalcy. So.
Thank you. Any questions? So, walking up to the front, I want to add to my report an update on the Memorial Day activities. We have worked with the veterans organizations and with Toledo Memorial Park. And for your information, you already know this, there will be no Memorial Day parade. The schools are closed, no bands. We can't have that many people along Main Street. There will, however, be a lightly advertised 10 a.m. memorial service on the Main Street Bridge right there by the hotel, with a few remarks by an elected official and playing of taps, the memorial service for the Navy veterans, and then we'll have something for the other services as well. I expect a very short ceremony. The day should not go without being recognized, but it's not as usual. It's not a parade. It should not attract a lot of people. That's 10 o'clock next Monday. If you are in town and able, you're very welcome to attend. Just maintain your social distancing. Okay. Mr. Schroyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brief update on our fund balances. General fund balance through last Friday is just over $5 million. We began the year at $4.8 million. Anything that's over $4 million at the end of the year will be transferred back to the capital improvement fund. Part of that audit finding on the transfers, the reverse way, to accomplish that.
That is to take down the audit amount that was brought to our attention several years ago.
Correct.
Right.
As far as the capital improvement fund, 9.9 million. We began the year at 10.9 million, but $1 million of that, $1 million hasn't been spent for projects. But essentially, we've already approved those projects, so we are $1 million less in the capital improvement fund, but we were expecting that. As far as the payroll tax withholding, money we received for payroll tax through May 14th, so last Friday, for the month of April, when everything was completely shut down, we received $160,000 less than what we received in 2019 for those same 14 days through May 14th. If you remember back to our withholdings, payroll withholdings for March, and half of March being shut down, we're also off 160,000. So at the end of this month, I suspect it'll be just for the month of April, collected in May, just over 300,000 lower until things started up then in May. We're always collecting a month behind. There's some difference of opinion out there. The Federal CARES Act It allows municipalities to be reimbursed for safety, wages, safety forces. They specifically say that police forces apply to that. The catch-all for us though is it has to be for wages that weren't in the original budget. And we haven't had any of those. We don't anticipate any of those. So there's a difference of opinion out there. Senate Bill 310 that was passed, Lucas allocating $525,000 to the city of Sylvania. But there's still that difference of opinion on whether we can use it for police wages. I've asked our labor attorney to look into this to get opinion on it. It really is a legal document. We don't have any significant other expenses that we but nothing significant. But the payroll for this police department would be significant. We've read out there that Toledo expects to get their money that way. But I think we're just going to wait and get an opinion from our labor attorney. It's the same labor attorney that handles all our union negotiations. And he's going to get back. We'll have something more to report on that soon. Are there any questions on any other parts of the budget or balances?
So Toby, I had a couple questions just to make sure that I'm clear. The April ending reduction, not counting the standard April 15th payments, right, which was $1 million. That was kicked to July. It was down 160 grand. This was a 2-week look, right?
Yep.
And we're down another 160 grand versus last year. And your anticipation is that when we get to the month end, that number will effectively double.
It'll be over 300, yes.
So I know I'm asking you to crack open your crystal ball. Maybe crack isn't the right ball, but with things starting to open back up, would you anticipate that starting to reverse, or would you expect that that's going to continue?
Think that collections in June for May will still be down because the first part of May was still kind of shut. I suspect June is still going to be a bad month. Once everything's up and going, we don't know for sure if everything's going to be going full, if everyone brought back all their employees or not, but it definitely should reverse itself and get more towards normal, but I would say normal. No.
Okay.
But so basically through the end of this month, we'll be down 500,000 total.
Mm-hmm.
But we also said that we had 4.8 million in the operations budget. We're up to 5 million or something in it right now.
Remember, the first 3 months of the year were really good months. We did really well, so we were doing better than what we had budgeted.
So looking into that same cracked crystal ball, are we in a cash flow problem with $5 million in the bank or so today to make it through the end of the year?
No. Especially now.
You have a problem. What are our ways out? Because we're not allowed to take money out of the capital improvement fund unless the state of Ohio, apparently, which I think has been talked about, but that $10 million, $9.9 million in capital can only be spent on capital by current law right now. But if it gets that bad, we're going to spend money out of the capital and ask permission later.
The only thing that can significantly affect the operation, the general fund, is wages.
Which some communities have taken action on. City of Toledo's furloughed people, laid people off. I read in the paper today that the city of Maumee is laid off too and giving everybody a 5% pay cut. I'm not sure why they're being that responsive. Have we heard about anybody else taking actions like that?
I have not. And one thing that we were kind of set up more for this maybe than other communities were the changes that we had made over the last 7 years, where we really cut staff significantly. We downsized significantly. that could be part of it too. These other communities just didn't do that or didn't feel the need to do that. And so the fact that they're people off or eliminating jobs, that's something we've been doing for 7 years now. So.
One more question. A few years ago, we changed the income tax formula, and instead of putting a third, I believe, of the income tax into capital, we're now put a sixth of income into capital. We could, by council action, change that in a pinch if we had to for a while.
Yes, it just takes council vote. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Questions of council members for Mr. Schroyer?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Toby, the $1 million that we didn't collect on April 15th, that's a delay in receipt, we expect, correct?
Yes, we're expecting to see that in July, yes.
Okay, but the $500,000 number you just mentioned is money that you don't expect we'll get. Is that correct?
We will not get that back, correct? Absolutely, for sure, we won't get that back.
Because that's lost economic activity during the shutdown.
It will, yeah, that's the payroll tax. So obviously you can't retroactively hire the people back. So yeah, we will not get that money back.
And I just want to comment on the auditor's finding. It's the finding about our use of our capital funds and the fund that while we are complying with that finding, we never accepted it. And in fact, maybe Leslie can remind us, but I believe we have a request for an attorney general opinion on that, which we still don't have a response from the attorney general.
That is correct.
And the current attorney general is the state auditor that signed the ruling against us.
So, but my point is, we still have, we've never accepted that finding. And as a city, we've requested a better interpretation of the law. I read Leslie's work, and it was, and she was right on this one. So we do have that to fall back on as well.
Toby, our unemployment benefits taxed at the local level.
Let's check on it. I'm not positive on it. We don't have anybody. Obviously, we didn't lay anybody off, so we don't have that.
Oh, but we received income taxes from the general public that if there's retro to when this began, that if the filings.
It's a good question. I'll have to check on it. I honestly don't know that. One thing about, this is separate for unemployment though. We are self-insured for unemployment. So anything that if we do furloughs or we do layoffs, it's not covered by insurance. So if it would ever come to something like that, which I'm not anticipating, unemployment is not the best situation for us because we're self-insured. A lot of these, the federal government made it such a good thing to get beyond unemployment. But for the actual company, if you have insurance, it's a great thing because then you don't have to pay anything. But we are self-insured, so we'd have to pay furloughs or anything like that. But I will employment for check with our tax department and see what they say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. All right, Mr. Sanford, Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of points to touch on. Just in following Toby, we work together, and in the next month we'll get a better idea in the different industries that we're feeling more of the pinch from, and we can identify and see if those things that are going to come back and how they're going to come back, or are there some places that are not going to come back, some of the jobs, and that'll help with Toby's projection for the rest of the year as we see the next month and a half play out through June. A lot of the small industries, that I think really got hit hard, like the restaurants, and the salons. We have a lot of salons in our community. They just opened back up. The restaurants, for the most part, been going on with some of the carry out, but they'll be starting to open it up again. It's coming. Those that had patios could go last weekend and this coming weekend. So we'll just continue to monitor that, how this all comes in and report back. I think at the last meeting, Mr. Friday, a question about Lords. I did talk to President Kowalik, and they're going to be having an announcement pretty soon about their coming fall schedule, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think it's what their plans are, but their announcement to do that. It was good talking with her and see what they've got planned going forward. Spoke last time about the Marathon Golf Tournament. They are going to the state this week, and I with the people, and they're really going on with a high-level pitch to the governor to get the Memorial Tournament in Columbus, our tournament here. There's a senior tournament in Akron. It's significant that now that there's a tournament in the LPGA that was canceled in Michigan, so this will be the first LPGA tournament if it's allowed. So I'm optimistic at this point it's going to happen, but I think we won't know though till the end of the month. That's the governor being consistent. He gets these meetings and they study it, and then they come back a few days later with what the ruling is going to be. So I'm just hopeful for that happening. We are going to have a farmer's market. It was questioned, but the DSA looked at it. They voted to move forward. It's going to be in a parking lot. They're deciding on which parking lot. One of the churches nearby downtown, or maybe Memorial Field. They're finalizing that the next day or so. They'll get that done. And as the mayor mentioned, I was in a meeting last week, a Zoom meeting about the DORA. The DORA is back. We did not have any complaints. That was the other thing. I did the same thing. I drove by our downtown Friday and Saturday. And I was pretty early, so I don't think there was still not a crowd yet. I didn't get out too late. So continue to talk with the DSA and kind of see what their plans are going forward.
And I think it's necessary for the DSA to be cognizant of Governor DeWine's admonition today that his rules say people must be seated if they're at an outside patio and being served alcohol or food in groups of no more than 10 with social distancing of 6 feet. And he said the penalty will be revocation of a liquor license. That's a severe penalty. We don't want to have any of our downtown businesses lose a liquor license. But we are confusing because how does that work with the DORA? There was nobody serving liquor or alcohol in the mini park, and yet it was packed.
We'll have to talk more as a staff with police and some of that.
That was the lead item for the governor today. If you can't keep your social distancing and follow the rules, he will change it.
I based on that too, and I heard a little bit of that, Mayor, that I'm suspecting that the liquor control officers that check the DORAs, they'll be out more in force from the governor's order this week.
Yeah, I bet they will be. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Sanford?
So I have a question about the enforcement. So you were saying the patios are packed and the parks are packed. Did you say that the liquor control is going to enforce that, or can would our police force enforce it? I mean, if there's a violation, who would somebody call?
They call the health department.
We call the health department.
On a Friday night, though?
Yes, when there's a liquor, if you remember, this quite a while ago that there was a case with.
I do remember that, but it was just one. That was a really long time ago, and it was one liquor control guy. This is it seems like a bigger problem.
Well, I think what the point is, we're talking about two different things. That if there's a DORA issue and a complaint, I think based on what happened across the state, the governor, they're going to send out the liquor control people to look at DORAs. I'm just thinking that's going to happen. but I'll let the chief answer and Kevin about what the security. I don't think we've had any real issues with the Dora, but we just have to be careful.
We haven't had any complaints specifically now. I have some concerns. I've heard some concerns about the mini park, and it is a violation of state law to have alcohol in the park there. If a complaint was called into the police department, we would legally have to act on that. Now, that doesn't mean that anybody that has a beer in there is going to be arrested, but it's also something we can't just turn a blind eye to. So, at that point, it puts us in a tough situation. So, the vendors that are selling alcohol in the area, and the folks who are supporting the door, need to be aware of the rules and try to help, maintain law and order there. So, and right now it hasn't been an issue, but all it takes is a commotion there or some type of disturbance, and then we'll have to be more mindful of making sure that the law is getting followed.
Is it possible for us to make sure that the bars know? I mean, that would be devastating if somebody lost their liquor license. I mean, and then to try to get it back. Do they know that? I mean, are they liable for the Dora people drinking in the park?
Well, they're supplying the alcohol, so I mean, I would probably have to talk to the law director. I don't know what their liability is at, but obviously, if the patrons are having a legal issue there, it could be bad, for the whole environment of the Dora situation. So,
I think what I'm interpreting though from the governor, Katie, is more when the liquor control would be in the social distancing and an overcrowded area, and that's more what their intent's going to be. The park might be a local issue that maybe we can address and whatever. I don't think that's going to be their focal point, but that's something I think we have to address.
And ultimately, if the health department if there's an issue with the health department, they're going to contact me as the chief of police, and then it puts it on me to address it. So at that point, the officers would have to go out and try to maintain that, or at least let people know. We try to take a non-conflict approach to dealing with social distancing and doing more of education. But when people have been consuming alcohol and that sort of thing, sometimes those negotiations are a little more difficult. So it will really depend on the circumstance. But information by the vendors down in they're working with the Dora and some of the organizations like downtown, the DSA, that would definitely help us to make sure that we're maintaining the rules and abiding by the law to operate the Dora. So we definitely don't want to be behind and not have those communications and then end up with a problem, because there's only so many ways to solve that. And again, when people have been drinking, there's not a lot of negotiation that can happen sometimes.
Okay. I had a question. I think I missed this. What's the relationship between our local police and the Board of Health and enforcing the Board of Health and enforcing these health-based orders?
So there's a hotline that people can call the health department if there's a complaint, and I should look here. But there's a hotline. So if someone observes an issue in this community, they can call the health department. The health department will then contact me directly. There's an officer that's designated with Toledo. He's a liaison officer. He gets the complaint from the health department. It's forwarded to the appropriate jurisdiction. And then at that point, there is state law. I don't have the ordinance with me. I have a packet that was provided to us by the state of Ohio that stipulates what we can enforce the governor's order under the ORC. Again, I don't have the numbers with me, but there's a mechanism for us to do that. Some jurisdictions have done that. So far, every business or individual that we have encountered who is outside of the social distancing rules has become compliant after we have spoken to them and educated them on the situation.
And just to add to that, Chief, prior to this DORA being reinstated, the calls that the health department was getting, I only got one call, was about the essential businesses. And other businesses were calling on a business who was in operation and they thought they should not be because they were not an essential business. Our guys weren't going and knocking on doors. We were all telling people to call the health department. That's where the health department came by.
So they make the initial notification. We have had 2 complaints about social distancing specifically, one within a business, one within a neighborhood. Both of those, the officers were able to talk to the people involved, update them on what was required, and voluntary compliance was gained. One example was a basketball hoop. There were multiple groups of kids and adults playing basketball in the neighborhood. They were not from the same family, and we spoke to the property owner. It was a temporary hoop. He took it down. So it was, compliant.
And it was in the right of way.
Right, it was a basketball hoop, but that was, facing into the right of way, as we see in many cul-de-sacs, that sort of thing. So, again, so far so good. It depends on how popular, how the bigger the event, especially events with alcohol, those can be a little harder to manage. So, being aware of these rules and having some communications ahead of time. By and large, my experience is when I go through downtown and I see the door going on, I know most of the people there. You probably know a lot of the people there. So the more that we're talking about those things and making sure everybody knows what the rules are and trying to be safe, I think the better off we'll be.
Questions or concerns?
We have no reason to think the state's going to look at Sylvania, Ohio to eliminate a liquor license.
No.
But the governor, that's as strong a words as I've heard from the governor. And he was distressed by what he saw in pictures from other parts of the state. And it was going on here, but not as severe.
If you remember it, when everything got started in March and the governor went by a St. Patrick's Day event, and that kind of got it fired up. So I think the people in Columbus are under more scrutiny than other parts of the state.
I just wanted Mr. Sanford to make sure that the DSA is aware of that possibility. Nothing is happening, but let's not have anything happen.
Right. I think we're in a good place right now. We want to stay there.
Right.
Bill, I had a quick question for you. So when DORA got reinstated, was that the county health department saying we could reinstate, or was it the state of Ohio?
The state of Ohio.
So when they said we can reinstate, they said we could do it from noon to 10, which is not the same hours as our original thing. So I guess from a broader standpoint, maybe even outside of the realm of COVID, did the state always have the capability to amend or adjust what we passed as legislation here, or how did legally?
The governor has the authority to do anything he wants to now, Patrick. Didn't you know that?
Apparently, that's kind of where I guess, and maybe this is a question for Leslie. Where does legally can they supersede what we passed as a?
Right. It came down. It was blanket across the state. It was by the.
So if we had passed a resolution that said it was from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., that blanket decree would have increased our DORA?
It just came in, and it could have. And again, he said, if you have a DORA, if you're going to reinstate, these are the rules you got to follow. And there was a list of 5 or 6 things, and it said the hours for everyone, and they didn't want you going.
Patrick, the reverse. I don't think it would have expanded hours. The governor also always says local communities have the right to have more stringent requirements.
Sure.
And he said that again today. So.
I guess from a legal standpoint, where does it stand with them being able to do that?
Must be a health determination, just like
it was
everything else.
That was included in Dr. Amy's original order, shutting down the DORAs. And then the reopening of them was also included in that, in the hours. And certainly, I think we still have our ability, if as a city council you decided that you weren't comfortable with having the DORA yet, you could have said, we know the governor said this, but we're going to temporarily freeze ours.
But what you just said, the reverse happened, was that I think it was Loveland that had a very restrictive. So then the council met and expanded to coincide with the state.
Yeah, I read that.
So.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions for Mr. Sanford or for the city's administrative staff, let's move on to council agenda 6. And we've got 2 items here. 6A is an update from Mr. Fry and perhaps Sanford about the fireworks potential for July the 3rd. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we had another Zoom conference call the other last week, and if you recall, myself, Mr. Sanford, Mr. Turner from the township, and Mike McMahon from Sage Yard sat again and discussed where we were at. We have been trying to figure out a way, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, to give us as much time as possible to let the air clear to see whether we have any more clarity from the governor or from other communities. I think you all saw that City of Toledo announced that they weren't going to have theirs. I don't know that their community necessarily is the same as ours. We had some long conversation about certain, almost for definitely not doing it at Centennial Terrace, but the possibility of still holding, because you could still look at Pace Center Park. There's lots of green space there, and social distancing would still be possible based on the amount of parking. At the same time, I think there's still ongoing significant concern, both from the police departments, the township and the city's police departments, and the fire department. I know we're supposed to have another meeting, another Zoom meeting on Friday to discuss it. So I sent an email because at this point we have an end of the month deadline. Is that correct, Mrs. Bryning? In our contract, and the city holds the contract, if you recall. And we can postpone effectively with no or push the contract 1 year if we choose to, with no significant economic repercussions. If we decide to cancel before the 1st of June, if we don't, then we start to incur some significant costs. We've got a meeting scheduled for Friday. I asked Mrs. Brining if she could reach out to the Zambelli people, who are the fireworks people, to see if we could get an extension on that. But at this point, it looks questionable in my mind, but we're trying to give it as much time as we can to allow for additional clarity. At this point, I would say it's not looking good. That we probably are, if I were guessing, I would say we're probably going to end up postponing it, unfortunately. But we're going to have another conversation on Friday, bring a recommendation back to the mayor and the administration on how to proceed from there. And there may be something, if we decide to proceed, then we decide to proceed. If we decide to postpone for a year, then we decide, we send that recommendation, and there'll be something probably in your packets at the next council meeting, first couple of days of June, to ratify that.
The council meeting is June 1st.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, do we have to cancel by the end of May, or is June 1 the day?
June 1st is the day.
She said June 1st. I don't know if you heard that or not.
June 1st.
So will we be able to will we need council action to cancel the fireworks?
I don't think so, Doug.
The mayor and finance director has the authority to make the call based on the.
I can't hear Leslie. I'm sorry.
It's raining pretty hard.
Sorry. The mayor has the authority to cancel the contract based on what was approved by council. But what we will do is bring something to council to ratify that action at the June 1st meeting. That's my current intent. If that's the direction the committee decides.
I'm still only partially hearing you. Sharon, is her microphone on?
You stand in front of that flat one there. Right there. I don't think that one makes any difference there.
Sorry, now can you hear me?
That's better, yeah.
The mayor has the authority to cancel the contract, to make the extension to the additional year based on the contract and legislation that was approved. What we do is still bring an ordinance to council at the June 1st meeting to ratify that decision.
Okay, I've got it. So you don't need us. Talking to people, I think the people I've talked to when they heard Toledo canceled fireworks, their reaction was they expected we would as well. So
I think I've been told, and I want Mr. Fry to confirm this, that the township trustees have already consented that whatever the city's decision is, they will abide by that as well, since we are the contract holders.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
And that is a tough thing. If we have the fireworks in Sylvania and they're not having them in Toledo, we don't know about Maumee and Perrysburg's display over the Maumee River yet. I think Oregon has said they're going to have theirs, but they won't have any central celebration. They are more wide open in Oregon than we are. Maumee River, you can get anywhere along the river and you can see them for miles. Here, we would have an awful lot of people parked along our roads trying to take a look at them. And so I will want to hear the 2 police chiefs and the fire chiefs' recommendations on that.
Yeah, my understanding, Mayor, from talking to Mr. Sanford earlier, is that the recommendation is not to hold them, but we've been trying everything we can to figure out a way to do it.
And if we don't have fireworks, there's just like we're doing something smaller on Memorial Day, we need to conceive of some activity on the 3rd or the 4th of July to recognize the day in a appropriate, smaller outdoor ceremony.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion on the fireworks? Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6B, temporary street closures. Lindsay Staub brought this to my attention last week, and I'm sure you all read the articles. There have been 2 now about the mom in Port Clinton. Mom Meals on Madison, that's their main street. I was actually over in Port Clinton over the weekend. I took a look at their scattered tables on Madison. They have 2 parallel roads to Madison. One is actually a bigger boulevard than street downtown is, and this is their season to make or break their businesses. But they did cancel their Walleye Festival, which was supposed to take place this weekend, which would have closed Madison anyways. They would have had a parade on Madison. They would have had their waterfront park with concession rides and everything going. But and they said it was successful. But I'm interested in hearing your opinions, and I want to hear from Mr. Sanford and the chief about it, but let's hear your opinions, unless you want to hear theirs first. I think the logic, and I'll talk more, give you something to criticize or correct me on. Over in Port Clinton, the point was they wanted to have more space to expand restaurants, outdoor eating areas to make people feel safer. Those restaurants, if you've been over there, do not have much in the way of parking other than what's on Madison Street, unless you go to the next street or something. They don't have parking lots adjacent to the restaurants. And I was thinking about that here. In downtown Sylvania, J&G's and Chandler's have a parking lot between them where perhaps tents or tables could be put. Inside the 5 does not. However, the restaurants up north of there do. Both restaurants up there can expand into their parking lot. So I was thinking, and in conversation with the chief, perhaps we could expand and inside the 5 to expand into Maplewood, close Maplewood, and allow them to set up a tent or something there because they don't have a big parking lot to expand into. That might accomplish the same outdoor. They'd have to be very careful about meeting the governor's requirements, but not inconvenience 8,000 vehicles a day traveling up and down our main street, which I guarantee you they didn't inconvenience in Port Clinton. And if they did, they've got 2 parallel thoroughfares adjacent to it to take the load. So that's my starting point, but this is a council discussion. And why don't we start with Lindsay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for introducing this subject, and I am eager to hear the other council members' thoughts on this. I'd seen in other cities, as I'm sure you have as well, that this is something that's being considered for different cities based on their particular circumstances, but places such as Tampa, Cincinnati, Minneapolis, even New York City is starting to do this, and I know we're on a smaller scale than they are, but that doesn't mean that we can't look at these ideas and see what might be a good fit for us. And in our area, there's sort of 2 main things I've been seeing across for ideas to help this out. And one of them is being a little more ending restrictions on extending indoor space into the outdoor areas, into parking lots or into the sidewalk areas. And that would be beneficial for areas such as Mayberry Square or Saxon Square, places that have adjacent parking lots, or even like J&G's, that they could do it there. But that doesn't help as much in the downtown for all of the business. So J&G's has a spot next to it, like the mayor said, and but say the bakery doesn't, Brishke's, or Chandler's doesn't have as much space because the sidewalks are pretty narrow in our downtown, and that's the largest, densest concentration we have of restaurants, and that's why I thought it might be worth considering the possibility of shutting down Main Street north of Monroe Street and south of Maplewood, because we have Summit Street that runs parallel as an alternative route. And then on top of that, a lot of people are spending a lot more time outside. Our parks are filling up. Even with Dora open, you can already tell that the sidewalks are getting a lot busier. And having additional seating out there might bring additional people and help reinvigorate the concentration of businesses we have in the downtown. So that's why I bring this up as a subject for us to discuss, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
What period of time will we be talking about? I would think that you'd want to do don't do what Port Clinton said, which is indefinitely. So every day is what I'm really getting to. I'm trying to avoid confusion for people in cars, and also overtime for our street workers to go out and erect and take down signs. I think if you're going to do it, you might just want to do it for a month. You could certainly do that on Maplewood. I'm not sure about Main Street. But to have it say that it's only going to be in the evening, well, maybe it's on the weekend or something. Maybe that's a thought. We put up barricades before we go home on Friday and take them down Monday morning.
Mr. Mayor, that's what I was thinking. Honestly, this is Doug. I was thinking about a weekend closure of that area as an experiment to see how it works and how our restaurants and bars respond to that as well. I don't think I'm ready to shut it down for a month tonight, but I'd certainly be willing to try it for a couple of weekends.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think the same thing. Downtown Toledo does where Hensville is. Now they have the automatic barriers that rise out of the ground with the push of a button, which makes it, I guess, easier on labor. But, I think as a broad statement, I think it's a great idea. I think as weather's getting nice, people want to spend more time outside, and where people are having to keep 6 feet apart, to give them more space to do that just makes sense. I mean, to think how busy some of the art walks have been, if something like that amount of people just on our sidewalks, it'd be very hard to keep everybody distant. If they had some more space to spread out and keep a distance away from people, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially on weekends, especially as we get into nicer weather.
Mr. Aller, the logistics of doing that, you don't just put a barricade at each end. You got to block off the left turn lane on eastbound. Just talk a little bit about the logistics of getting that done and the cost that might be involved.
Yeah, there would be, the suggestion was to close it on Friday afternoon, and then open it on Monday morning. Yeah, we would have to set up barrels, closing the right-hand turn on Monroe, the westbound Monroe, the left turn lane in the eastbound direction. We would have to close it. We would have to put signage up at Erie Street for any trucks coming from Michigan, because they would not be able to make that Maplewood transition.
Just what we do for Fall Festival.
And for Maple and Main.
No,
and-
we won't go front door. We're gonna stop at Maplewood. We're not gonna go up mid-block.
Okay.
But for Maple and Main festivals, it's similar, right? That we've done in the past. I mean, we have closed Main Street, you know. That's
Yes, we do it once a year.
Yeah.
Twice, sometimes twice, but just once a year. Now we're talking where we're doing it 9 times a year. Yeah, I would, you know, Main Street gets over, the mayor said 8,000. Main Street gets over 12,000 vehicles per day. My recommendation would be to use Maplewood. If Main Street is chosen, then we'll do so. But you're affecting that. Those 12,000 vehicles are now going to be going past residential street or something. So bear that in mind.
Was there any discussion about closing it on the other side, meaning from Main Street to Summit Street?
from Maplewood to Erie.
Yeah, Maplewood.
Yes.
We get both sides of Maplewood.
No, I'm just saying, like, you keep Main Street open, but you close it right there at J&G's to Summit.
We do get, when the east part of Maplewood gets closed, the credit union, their customers can't pull up in front of the door. In fact, on a weekend, they're closed in.
Yeah, it's a bank, right? Yeah.
And as for Brischke's, they've never complained to me about the road being open. They complain to me when it's closed because they think it hurts their business. People for coming to get their baked goods can't park in front, and they don't really want them coming through the back door. So that may not be the case anymore, but not everybody is going to say, yes, let's close the street. We think that's a great idea. Including Revit.
Yeah.
Everybody's probably true, yeah.
Mr.
Bill, you got any input on that?
Yeah, for different reasons, I agree with Kevin. I think closing Main Street like this is going to be problematic, and we try to keep it open. I get more complaints anytime we have just one or two festivals like the Maple and Main. It affects people getting to the restaurants, like Element up the block and Sodbuster. They do not like the street closed at any time. So we have to keep that in mind that, you know, there's a benefit. I understand what Lindsay's presenting. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with the streets. The Maplewood, I think, to start out, that'd be a good place to try and see how that would work all weekend and have that area and then take it down and see how that goes. But I just think keeping Main Street right now, we really need to keep that open unless it's some type of a one-time event or something.
If we could we take a step back just for a second? Mr. Sanford, we've had the last year and maybe the year prior on Maplewood, we've shut it down once a week for the farmers market, correct?
Correct.
How many phone calls have we had? How many complaints did we have regarding the shutdown on a once a week basis for the afternoon of Tuesday?
Really, Dean, I had a couple complaints from residents in the apartments, but after I talked with them and gave them, there was another way they could go and park. And so it really worked out pretty well having the farmers market there.
Okay. And if we elected to shutter Maplewood on the weekends, Friday afternoon to Monday morning, that section of Maplewood then, are people putting tables up? Who's putting tables up? Or would the restaurants be serving food there? Are there health code issues? Are there fire issues?
I think we'd have to work all that out. I think you'd have to find out. I think what's going on in other communities, some of the restaurants are doing that. Mayor?
The governor has given permission for restaurants and particularly liquor permit holders to expand their outside service areas.
Okay.
And I would think that inside the 5 is the one that doesn't have any place to expand to. We would permit them to go out there. If they want to put up a tent, we need to really close it for more than just the weekend. A lot of places are putting up tents. Element has a large parking lot that they can go out into. So does Sodbusters. So they can erect a tent out there and leave it up for a month or two. The same is true, I think, for for J&G and Chandler's, they're going to lose parking, but they both have access to the parking lot between the two of them.
Right, so J&G's has already said on the DSA meeting last week that they're not going to have indoor seating because they can't meet the 6 foot limitations inside. So would they be allowed to have their patrons take the food over to this closed section, or is this exclusively just for inside the 5?
No, I think it's for anybody.
Okay.
I think it might, the governor hasn't been that specific, but he has said, yes, expand the outside patio areas. And I think that's what's happening when people go out into the streets.
Yeah, there's 2 things I think happen here, that the sidewalks over the patios extend, and then that's the restaurant they would serve to their patio. You go into the street, it's more of a takeout order from any place.
And just as a follow-up, who's paying for the erection of these prohibitions for these times? Because I know the DSA has paid for years to shut the street down for the market, for the farmers market. Who's going to pay for this shutdown? Because I can't speak for DSA, but I can generally tell you that's going to go down sideways. Right. If they had to pay for all these years to shut the street down, and then we decide, okay, we're going to shut the street down on weekends, through the summer or whatever, and we're going to cover it ourselves.
I think we definitely have to talk to them. I've already talked to Ray and Barb a little bit about it, and I told her it was going to be a discussion point tonight. I think we need something coming from the grassroots, coming from DSA, and what they want to do, how they want to handle it, and working with us. And back to Maplewood, on this side of Maplewood, the west side, if we just closed from Richard Becker Place, I think it'd be problematic if we went all the way to the railroad tracks, but just from Richard Becker Place, the alleyway to Main Street, and then across the street, that'd be very similar to what we've done with some of the guard walks and some of the events and people spread, and there'd be room for them to spread out. I'd like to at least try that, but then also work with the DSA as to what's the game plan, because the farmers market won't be in the street this year, so that they won't have that expense that they had that Kevin gave them a pretty good deal on and how it worked last year.
So what's the time frame, Lindsay, that you envision this occurring? Are you saying shut it down for 3 months, or are you talking about weekends, or what are you thinking?
Oh, well, I was looking at this as a temporary trial period. I mean, we're at a very unusual time. And obviously now is when weather's getting better, and now is a lot of people are starting to feel more stuck indoors. So in my mind, it seemed like it would make sense that it would be something that we'd try for maybe a month, but it would be, it could just be in select hours or on select days, but it's more of a, let's try it for a bit. And if it seems to be popular and go well, then we can start looking at how we can expand it, or maybe we don't have a popular option. And I did want to add the comment that the traffic numbers, that those are those from the stay-at-home order? Because I think driving is down from before. How we look at the use of some of these streets. That's what's been mentioned in some of these other articles.
Those are average numbers from TMACOG. So yeah, they would be down, but it's cut them in half here at 6,000. So I don't how traffic has been affected from the side of that.
Hey, Kevin, while you're standing there, do you have a schedule to put the bike rack back? The one that goes in front of Chandler's?
Yeah.
And then the parklets, has the DSA been given the okay to put the parklets in?
We bike rack will be able to go in. We're holding off on that because of the Maple Main, but now that's been canceled, so we could get that installed. And the parklets will probably be going up very soon. I have received an email from the DSA asking about that. We're just working through streets to get that scheduled, so that'll be up before June. I
I don't know that we'll get it installed yet this week, but it'll be installed before.
And then one more big space that we have downtown that's highly unused. What about the historical village and the space behind the museum? I mean, inside the 5, that would be the perfect spot. I mean, the historical village is a nice grassy park. We wouldn't have to close any streets, and people would actually be there then.
I think part of the thought of it being on a street or being closer to the main public thoroughway is so that it's easier access for all of the businesses. So part of the advantage of doing something like this in the downtown area is that it would hopefully help benefit not just the inside the 5 or not just J&G's, but it would help benefit the whole area so that people who are coming there for food or for drink might also then stop in at the store. And there's a chance maybe the store even has some tables out on the sidewalk to help get more attention. So it's creating more of a center of activity. I
love the center of activity thought. I'm just a little bit worried about the whole, like you shut the streets down and it has to look good. It can't be like a whole bunch of random sort of junky tables. It has to like look like you'd want to drive by and go, oh, that looks so great. Let's stop. Are there going to be food trucks, lots of tables? I mean, there has to be some draw, not just orange barrels and the street closed. We need a plan for the whole summer is what we really need.
Pretty much that's something we'd like build up to. I definitely agree we'd want to get there. But the way I'm thinking is, these are not normal times, and that I think trying new things right now is now is the time to try something and see if it works. And that's where I think, obviously, yes, it should be aesthetic. But I think to give these businesses a place to maybe have some overflow to help their bottom line is a priority. And I think it would be a great idea to try it. I'm inclined to say we should try it for, every day of the week for, I don't know, a few weeks or something, and see if, like I said, if this is a trial period, let's see what days it's being used and not, and let's keep an eye on it. And that's my thinking. And then I guess my question would be for really anybody is, so if we shifted this to Maplewood, do we think it would be better or easier from the administrative point of view to do east or west of Main Street?
I think it depends. If you're talking about a permanent type deal, that we could do that on the west side here.
Yeah.
The east side would have to be like a take up or put up on the weekend kind of a thing. But my thought, Mayor, is maybe if staff could talk a little bit and what we've heard and come back with some recommendations on how to move forward.
We can, but I'm not sure this should wait 2 weeks. This is a current issue.
No, and I didn't mean that we report this week. We could go on with different scenarios all night. The next couple of days, we can meet, come up with some things and share that with council, because I agree. I think it's going to be a nice weekend this weekend coming up weather-wise, so there might be more demand to do some stuff. It'd be nice to have something this weekend.
I think that's important. If you're going to do something, you need to do it.
And then also, I have to talk to the DSA.
What if we just start with half of Maplewood, half of the east side of Maplewood, so that the credit union can still go in their driveway and Reed can still go in, and you just take half of the block and shut it down permanently, for the summer. From the intersection to the first driveway. So there's no parking lots that are being affected. There's no businesses, but it's next to the corner park.
Okay, when I talked to them, when we were looking at the farmers market, they were dead against any closures, even partials, credit union, because people come up Main Street and pull up and there's nowhere to turn around.
Yeah, it causes a traffic issue. People come off of Summit Street, they can't turn around.
Right.
And the other thing, Katie, is you create a dead end. And so you have an out-of-town traveler, even a local traveler, that doesn't realize that it's closed. You can have all the signage at the intersection you want, but if it's open for a car's going through, and then they get to where we've got it blocked off and they got nowhere to go.
Even a no through traffic sign, credit union only, right turn, or left.
I can show you plenty of construction sites that does not say.
I do think though that Bill makes a valid point. We could have this discussion all night long. Originally I thought it might be a good idea to send it to committee. There's a sense of urgency that this happened more quickly than not. So how do we move forward to get something in place by this weekend? It's not our normal process. So we're kind of trying to usurp our normal process to make something happen quickly for our community. We don't even know for sure what our community wants to happen, right?
Right.
Do we know that inside the 5 would think this is a great idea? I mean, I would think they would, but have we asked yet?
Right, we should talk to them.
So I would just think that you made an awfully kind offer to let administration sit down and come up with some recommendations. And then, if you come up with something, maybe we can do a Zoom call of employee and community relations or something and listen to that and or a committee of the whole, something on Friday morning or something. I think we have to find a way to move the meeting forward. And this isn't something we generally would be discussing at council.
I think we can get our heads together and come back and get something out to you by Wednesday and have an idea going in, because you need a couple days to get prepared if you're going to be doing something.
And so maybe we move forward and put in place a Zoom meeting for something on Friday morning or something, just to have or maybe it has to be Thursday, actually. I don't know, we do it Friday and have something ready. So I would that be something that would work for the group?
Two things. One is, to Katie's point, I wouldn't want to restrict anything to the businesses or the DSA requirements. That if we were to do this, we could take the small steps to possibly engage in doing it. And how much time do you need, Kevin, to implement something like this? Would, if we have a decision by Friday morning, to have a weekend?
Yeah, we should be able to put that together, because we've got several detour plans because of projects and things like that. We've got several detour plans kind of prefabbed, if you will. So it would just be a matter of getting everything mobilized and in place. So we should be able to
do something that quick. And the other thing I was thinking is, any suggestions that we would have in the meantime, that we could get those to Bill from our perspective to give this a little bit of thought. So when either the committee gets together or that you get together, you have our additional thoughts on paper or any
Yeah, I think it's great for being proactive and getting out in front of it. I don't want to discourage that. But
I do, I originally thought it would be wonderful to go to committee first, but there is something about, coincidentally, this being Memorial Day weekend. It happens to be a holiday weekend, a celebratory weekend. So from that perspective, if there's a way to make it happen, I think that would be fine.
So would you you mentioned my committee, I'm happy to take it. Should we schedule an employee, should we do that now and do that, schedule a meeting for Friday morning and just have it on the
Wednesday
books?
Or whatever. I think we should.
I think there should be committee of the whole. I don't want to just have everything be committee of the whole, but.
Or it could be in the streets, right?
Either way, it doesn't matter what committee it is.
I think that
to me, because then you're only going to have four. Then you're only theoretically going to have 4 voices out of 7. I think everybody should have an opportunity to vote on this.
Yeah.
If we're going to do this, everybody needs to hold hands and jump. Well, from that standpoint, what does this table to make this happen?
I think if the committee of the whole made a decision, even though it didn't come to full council, that would be okay. Do you know?
Is it a proposal? Is it an ordinance?
No, we just need a motion.
It's a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, maybe we could take a quick look at our calendars. Would you be all right with that, Mr. Mayor, and talk about that? You think you could have something by Wednesday, so we could maybe do something Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning? Do people have time on their schedules if we did something at 5 o'clock on Wednesday or at 8:30 on Thursday?
8:30 Thursday. 8 or 8:30 Thursday morning would work better for me.
I can't do Thursday morning, but I could do Wednesday night.
I could do Wednesday night, but not Thursday. Wednesday night.
I can make it work.
Can you make it work? Is 5 o'clock a good time, or 4:30?
4:30 might be better.
4:30 might be better.
4:30 is good. I like that.
All right. So how about if we do 4:30 on Wednesday, May 20th, and that'll be a Zoom meeting. So I would move that we have a committee of the whole meeting to review the recommendations from administration regarding the closing of streets for
temporary street closures.
Temporary street closures, thank you. 4:30 via Zoom on Wednesday, May 20th.
We need a motion to schedule a committee of the whole
That
meeting.
was the motion.
Second. Moved and seconded to hold a special committee of the whole meeting to discuss temporary street closures this Wednesday at 4:30 via Zoom. Chuck, this will probably be just a phone-in one for everybody, I would think.
Yes.
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 All right. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will send out a Zoom invitation to everybody so you can do it remotely. And that'll give the service department a day or two to get any ordered barricades off. Okay, sounds like a good solution.
And Mr. Sanford, you'll get something in advance to people if you have
Yes.
something available. If not,
Yes. We'll get sent out via email to everybody.
Thank you, Paul. All right. I think we need to move ahead with the agenda. We got a lot of agenda items to get through here, if that's all right. Let's move on to agenda item 7, which has 3 annual assessments to take into account. The first one is for the care of trees in the right-of-ways. It's ordinance 24, 2020. This is an annual ordinance. I don't think the assessment rate has changed. So with that, Mrs. Capolini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 24-2020, providing for the controlling blight and disease of shade trees and for planting, maintaining, trimming, and removing shade trees in and along the streets and within public right-of-way of the city of Sylvania, authorizing the Director of Public Service by and through the proper offices of said city to do said work during the year 2020, establishing one district for said purpose in accordance with the provisions of section 727.011 of the revised Code of Ohio, providing for the assessment of the cost and expense thereof upon abutting property, waiving a second and third reading and declaring an emergency, and also all members of council having received copies in advance.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance number 24, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Yes, I'd like to move final passage of ordinance number 24-2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 24, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to agenda and proposed ordinance 24, 2020 is approved. Agenda item 7B is proposed ordinance 25, 2020, and this is for the construction, maintenance, repair, cleaning, and enclosing of open ditch drainage. Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 25-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I'll reading by title only. Providing for the construction, maintenance, repair, cleaning, and enclosure, open drainage ditches located within the corporate limits of the city of Sylvania, authorizing the Director of Public Service by and through the proper offices of said city to do said work during the year 2020, establishing one district for the said purpose in accordance with the provisions of section 727-0.012 of the revised Code of Ohio, providing for the assessment of the cost and expense thereof upon abutting property and declaring an emergency, waiving the second and third reading and declaring an emergency.
second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 25, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 25-2020 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 25, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 25, 2020 is approved. Moving on to agenda item 7C, proposed resolution 14, 2020. Declaring the necessity of lighting the streets in the city of Sylvania, which will lead to street light assessment. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 14, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Declaring the necessity of lighting the streets in the city of Sylvania, Ohio, determining the
the manner of providing street lighting on the basis of the property owner's share of the cost and annual assessment, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that resolution number 14, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of resolution number 14, 2020.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for final passage of resolution 14, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. My thanks to Mrs. Booker for her work to prepare these assessments. It's a big job every year. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8. You have the service director's report on the bids received for the resurfacing of Brookfield Estates. This is a bid project. We've discussed it. We did get very good bids. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we received 5 bids on April 29th for the project. Our original estimate that we had in the budget was $300,000. Our final engineer's estimate was $293,854, and Gherkin Paving submitted the low bid of $255,108.27. Gherkin Paving does, numerous paving projects. You see the trucks everywhere when there's paving being done. Very good contractor. If you take a look at the bids that we got, we have 4 of the 5 bids were within about 12% of each other, which is very tight bidding. And only on a $255,000 project, only $1,300 separated the 2 lowest bids. So I think we got good pricing on this project, and I would recommend awarding the contract to Gherkin.
Questions for Mr. Aller?
Kevin, when do you anticipate this work would be done if or when we approve this?
They did not give a schedule as to when they will do the work. I do know they're also doing the ongoing project on Brett Road, King Road, and Centennial. I would anticipate that they would move some of that equipment. Right.
We're also working on Alexis Road back in the city of Toledo right now.
Yeah, so I would anticipate that it would be something that would get done fairly quickly.
Okay.
All right, you do have in your council packets.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, this is Doug again. We have 3 expenditure items on our agenda tonight. This item 8 for the Brookfield Estates resurfacing, the Maplewood reconstruction project, which is item 9, and item 12, which is a public service vehicle purchase. I'm not comfortable moving forward with resurfacing the streets and expending monies to do that right now until we have additional information about where we stand with our revenues. I think what we've heard tonight is we're $500,000 down permanently, and we're going to continue to have constrained activity in the city for at least another month or so. And we're going to have some long-term economic impacts that I don't think we're able to predict right now. And I assume we don't have to accept this contract tonight, just from our discussions about bid length and how we were going to bid these, assuming that we did that these bids are open for longer than we had anticipated, or than the 30 days that we normally request. I know we talked about that at a previous meeting.
It's a good 60 days, Mr. Hanum, which would take us to the end of June.
Which means that we'll have a lot more information about May and the first half of June when we make that decision, which is consistent with what I understood and what I had hoped we'd be able to do. So to advance the ball here, and I know we've been at this meeting already for a long time. I think items 9 and 12 are critical and we need to do those immediately, but I would like to defer the Brookfield Estates resurfacing project action tonight and postpone that to a later meeting.
These are capital improvement funds, which we cannot expend for operations without a change in state law. However, prudence would say that perhaps we should use some of those 60 days to think about it. But I want to look at the committee chairman, Mr. Fry, or other members of council. Do you have comments on this?
Mr. Mayor, I have no problem pushing this off, provided we have these are great bids. Take another couple of weeks to see where we're at the end of May to see whether we're really down as much as we expect. I've got no issue with that, provided that the bids are still good.
Mr. Aller, we have until about June 28th, June 29th.
Yes, yeah, we would have until June 29th. I would just reiterate that what you indicated, Mayor, they are capital improvement funds. So the reductions that Mr. Shorter talked about earlier don't have an impact on that capital improvement fund. But we do have until the end of June.
Other members of council?
If there's no risk or harm in waiting, and
doesn't appear to be,
then why not?
I'm also in support of waiting.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Let's hold off and see what happens.
Why don't we have a motion to table this until our June 1st meeting and bring it back?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to table ordinance number 26, 2020 until the first meeting in June.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to table proposed ordinance 26, 2020 until our next meeting on June the 1st. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll put it back on the agenda for our next meeting. Turning to the second page of our agenda, agenda item 9 is to hire engineers for our Maplewood Avenue reconstruction project. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a reconstruction of Maplewood between the railroad tracks and Main Street. It is an OPWC project, and ultimately, once the OPWC agreement is done next July, we will be able to recoup 47% of these costs. That is the share of the total project costs that OPWC is covering. We requested proposals from 3 local engineering firms, and CT Consultants provided what we believe to be the lowest and best bid in the amount of $36,500. We have not worked with CT Consultants directly before, but they are a long-term consulting firm. They're well-known around the state and have done several large and high-profile projects. So we have no issue with entering into an agreement with them. This was also in our capital improvement budget. Because of the OPWC funding, we are on a timetable that we need to meet in order to advertise the project in a timely manner. And so we would recommend moving forward with CT Consultants with a contract of $36,500.
Further discussion?
So I know that this has already been a long meeting and this has to go quickly, but I sort of had a lot of questions about the design, and is the bump out going to be a mini parklet? And it just seems like there's really some good opportunity to do something great here. And I'm just wondering if this is the last time we're going to talk about it, and then all of a sudden we're going to get a design that has to be approved in a minute, or will it come back again so that we can talk about it when we have more time? Or
it'll be, yeah, I'm sorry, Mrs. Catlin, didn't mean to cut you off. It'll be much like the tighter time frame, but it'll be much like the Main Street project was, where we got some general concepts and then kind of put everything together with a final plan and brought it back. We do also plan on having meetings with some of the downtown businesses, the BSA, the chamber, things of that nature, because this short piece, while it is a short piece, it's going to, much like South Main Street did, we need to be able to tie this into whatever Main Street is going to become when that streetscape is done. So this is kind of step one, or step 1.5, if you will, of that downtown streetscape.
Construction is not scheduled until 2022.
Correct.
It feels hurried, but it's a state of Ohio hurry up and wait project.
Yes.
So I'm not exactly sure who was on the Parklet committee, but I felt like they did a good job and they've already looked at a lot of those issues. Would it be possible for you to put the Parklet committee in your loop? Absolutely. And then one more thing about that stamped cement. So I don't know if you noticed that on Main Street, it's kind of peeling up. It was peeling, and then I think you went back and somebody painted it or sealed it, but it's still like bubbling up. That stamped cement, it's going to be dated like so fast. Could we just stop on the stamped cement?
We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, if we're ready, Mr. Fry, ordinance 27, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 27, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Accepting the proposal of CT Consultants to provide engineering services for the Maplewood Avenue reconstruction project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $36,500, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 27, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 27, 2020.
Second. Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 27, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 27, 2020 is approved. Moving to agenda item 10. This is a right-of-way dedication at 5576 Centennial Road. Mr. Aller.
Yeah, how this property got an address like that, I'll never know. This is an odd situation. We actually found it when Mrs. Booker started looking at the assessments over this year. And this parcel all of a sudden popped out of nowhere. It had never been on our listing before. Back in '94, we had a strip of land that was given basically to the city. It was part of the old Toledo, Angola, and Western Railroad Company, and now it has power lines running down.
Is this the west side of Eagle Trace?
The west side of Eagle Trace.
Yeah, so I remember those discussions. Yeah.
Okay. In 2005, the city then moved forward with property splits and basically gave in the rear yards of all of the Eagle Trace properties, basically split that long, thin lot and gave each piece to each individual property owner that was in their rear yard. A piece that's actually within Erie Street, within the right-of-way of Erie Street, was never addressed. And it all of a sudden showed up as a separate parcel. So what we're doing here is basically just eliminating that parcel and committing it to where it would be right-of-way and would go away or just be part of the right-of-way of Erie Street, which is what everybody has assumed for the past 35 years. It's an odd thing, but this cleans it all up.
Sounds like a good move. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 28, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Accepting from the city of Sylvania a warranty deed of right-of-way, dedicating the same for public purposes, providing funds therefore, waiving the second and third readings, and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance number 28, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move ordinance number 28, 2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 28, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 28, 2020 is approved. Moving on to agenda item 11. You have in your council packets a banner that the Sylvania schools would like to erect on Main Street. They are willing to pay the cost of it, both the fabrication of the banner and the installation cost and the application fee. You have a copy of it right here. It says, "Congratulations, Sylvania graduates." Sounds like a wonderful idea, but it requires council approval to put up a banner. Mr. Hanum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move adoption of ordinance number 29-2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Approving the banner application of the Sylvania schools, authorizing the zoning administrator to indicate such approval on behalf of the city of Sylvania, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 29-2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move final passage of ordinance number 29-2020 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 29-2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 29-2020 is approved. We all know these are special times. The photo displays on the North Hill, the Band Hill at Northview and on Cougar Lane are very nice. If you haven't seen them, they're quite something to see. Moving on to agenda item 12. Public service vehicle purchase. Mr. Aller, put this in perspective for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The sign truck that we use for signal head work, high traffic signs that we've repaired, like over on the mast arms of traffic signals, is in the lift portion of it is in extremely poor condition. The truck itself is actually held up just fine, but the lift is the chassis and the lift assembly itself has just not held up well. The most recent thing that we found is that we have some bearings that are going out on the main portion of the main arm of the lift, and being able to service it is next to impossible. Finding parts and things of that nature are just difficult. That portion, so we'd be able to reuse the truck, but we basically need to put a whole new lift truck. We've reached out to Lift-A-Loft. They're out of Muncie, Indiana. As you can imagine, there aren't a whole lot of companies that you can go to for something like this, so you're pretty limited on making some contact. They provided us a quote of $49,700, and we'll basically take everything off of what's existing and put a new lift onto that truck, and we'll have that truck back in business. The condition of the truck now, I have several pictures. I'm not comfortable with having people go up on that truck. It's the floorboard is rotting away and things of that nature. So it's just not something that we want to continue. So I would recommend that we move forward with this purchase. This was also included in the 2020 capital improvement plan, and we request permission to move forward.
We had some other vehicles in the capital improvement plan. What's your plan with those?
That's correct. We had two other vehicles, two pickups that were part of the 2020 capital improvement plan. We are holding off on those. It's like anything else, even if it's around your home. If you have to, you will make your vehicle last. With things that are going on, we decided to hold off on those two purchases. So that's roughly about $55,000 or so that we'll hold off. We do not plan at this time. We'll see how things go. We'll see what the picture looks like as we get closer to the end of the year. But right now, we're holding those back and don't plan to move forward with it right now.
But this is the safety one. We need to do it now.
Yes, this one. Right.
Any questions for Mr. Aller? Hearing none, Mr. Fry, ordinance 30, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice, man. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 30, 2020. All members of council having previously received copies, I will read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to accept a proposal of Lift-A-Lot for the repair and replacement of the sign truck for the Department of Public Service, appropriating $49,750. Therefore, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance number 30, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move passage of ordinance number 30, 2020 as an emergency measure.
Second. Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 30, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 30, 2020 is approved. Next item on the agenda, item 13, has been delayed. Mrs. Brining, what was the reason for the delay?
There's some modifications that need to be made to the legislation.
All right. Moving on to agenda item 14, proposed ordinance 32, 2020, approving our Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District program for residential purposes. Mr. Aller, you want to address what this is, or Mrs. Brining? In just a few words, I know it. Just tell us what it can do.
Yeah, basically, a homeowner, if they want to make some energy improvements to their home, new furnace, insulation, windows, and some
energy saving improvements.
Then this gives them another mechanism to be able to finance that. It's a program through the Port Authority. We actually did this. We entered into the ESID with the advent of Funnigan's. That they got us into the program, and now the residential program is beginning up. I sit on the board of this ESID, and we hear the applications every quarter and typically approved. They go through a pretty rigorous process to get the funding. It basically opens up the program to residential projects.
In a few words, they can contract for energy saving improvements. The government authority, the Port Authority in this case, will pay for them and finance them, and they pay back the Port Authority on their property taxes, or how?
Through the property taxes, our finance department basically issues the assessments, collects the assessments, and then the money goes to the Port Authority.
These sorts of programs have been used for a long time. The schools have that. You pay back with energy savings the cost of the improvement. They just need somebody to finance it over time. So that's what it is.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Fry.
Given my company's economic relationship with the Port Authority, I would request that I push back the table.
We need a motion to permit that.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Mrs. Westfall, seconded to allow Mr. Fry to push back due to a conflict of interest. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Dow, I thought maybe you could read this one.
I would be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 32-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance, I will read by title only. The ordinance approving the Northwest Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District Program Plan, Residential Plan, authorizing the execution, delivery, and performance of a city residential PACE cooperative agreement with respect to property assessed clean energy transactions in cooperation with the Northwest Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District and the Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority, authorizing the Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority to approve petitions and plans for public improvements or public services submitted by the owners of real property within the city requesting that their property be added to the territory of the Northwest Ohio Advanced Energy Improvement District and assessed for the cost of such plans on behalf of the council of the city, waiving the second and third reading and declaring an emergency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that ordinance number 32, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
I move final passage of ordinance number 32-2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 32, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 32, 2020 is approved. And Mr. Aller, one thing we didn't say is this doesn't cost the city anything.
No.
No. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 15. This is to authorize entering into agreement with the Board of Township Trustees for the JED that's been discussed. We need to allow Mr. Fry to rejoin the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And this is ordinance 15. What's the status of this, Mr. Sanford?
Just that it's been approved by the township, and I believe we have a meeting this week. Leslie and I will take part in a meeting with the township officials to move this forward.
Both the city and the township has had their public hearings, and the township's actually approved the JED?
Yes, they voted at the last meeting after their hearing to approve it. So once we have the approval, then we can start working out the details.
This is a wonderful precedent-setting step forward.
Very historic.
Yep. So I would recommend approval of ordinance 33, 2020. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 33-2020. All members of council having received copies in advance. I will read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into an agreement with the Board of Township Trustees of Sylvania Township, Lucas County, Ohio, to create a joint economic development district located in a portion of the unincorporated area of Sylvania Township, waiving the second and third readings and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that ordinance number 33, 2020 be read by title only and the second and third readings be waived. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final passage.
Mr. Mayor, prior to reading this, I would like to just make a few quick remarks if I could. I'd like to extend thanks to city administration for their hard work in moving this JED forward. I know it's something that we've had on our radar for quite some time. It feels very good to see this success, and I commend you on your good work. And I thank all of the members of administration for your efforts in making this move forward.
Thank you.
With that, I will move final passage for ordinance number 33-2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for final passage of ordinance 33, 2020 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 33, 2020 is approved. Agenda item 16 is for setting a public hearing date. This is previously referred to the Planning Commission months ago because of an injury of the project engineer. They just came to the Plan Commission meeting last week and presented the plans for a zoning change and also a lot split to take place on South Main Street to expand the parking lot to the south for tequila and those businesses, and also to build a threeplex, a 3-unit building south of that, and to demolish the existing dilapidated residential unit on the site. The Plan Commission recommended approval of this, and we need to set a public hearing date. The clerk recommends July 20th for this date.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed reading the Planning Commission minutes that there's the approval here was contingent on the implementation of an improvement agreement. Could you address that briefly?
Yes, that's been part of the negotiations all along. That particular commercial strip is quite old. It was there when I was in high school and does not meet our sign code. And we've been working with the owner of that for some time, and he has agreed to, as part of this expansion project, to make improvements, updates to the building as well.
Assuming
and I
that
am the one that called for that to be part of the contingencies.
Well, thank you for that. As we set a hearing for July 20th on this, can we anticipate that we will see that improvement agreement, or at least a draft of it, before the public hearing on the 20th?
Mr. Aller, what do you think?
I will have to reach out to the developer. See, I don't know how far along he is with anything, and I'll have to see what his timing is. We may be able to get a written agreement, but I don't know that we'll have it drawn.
Well, even if we just have the outlines of the improvement agreement, I think that would be an important aspect of moving forward on this. Obviously, the Planning Commission thought it was, and if we're going to do a public hearing, I'd like to know at least what the broad outlines of that improvement agreement would look like, and be able to present that to the public on the 20th. I mean, this strip center is one that I know I've received comments on over the years, and I'm excited about the insistence of the Planning Commission in seeing it improved as part of this lot split.
And zoning change. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd also like to concur with your, having said this, having come from the Planning Commission just before council and being on the commission for years, it has been an issue with the owner, and we've been waiting for something to happen to break. And the only thing I'll add to that is, yes, have it in writing, and yes, have a timeline.
I'm in full agreement.
Well, Mr. Mayor, then I would move that we set a public hearing on zoning ordinance amendment ZA 1-2020 for July 20th. And can we do that at 6:45?
Sure. If you think it's gonna, we can do it at 7. We'll just start the later if it runs over.
All right, let's do that. Let's do it at 7.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set the public hearing date for zoning ordinance amendment 20 for 7 p.m. on Monday, July 20th. And authorize the clerk to advertise the same. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 17 is committee reports. A is committee of the whole meetings. A1 is a discussion of the downtown plan meeting on May the 7th. This is what.
Yes, we did have May 7th at 1 o'clock. We had a committee of the whole meeting to discuss the downtown development plan presented by Environmental Design Group. All members of council were present, as well as members of administration, Leslie Brining, Bill Sanford, Chuck Silvernail, Kevin, and guests from Environmental Design included Michelle Johnson and Ben McKeeman. After welcoming all, Mr. Sanford made some brief opening remarks, and we turned over the meeting to Michelle Johnson so that she could respond to questions from council members. All members of council had received copies of the Phase 1 report from Environmental Design in advance and had had the opportunity to submit their own questions. And that was the real purpose of this meeting, to get the response from the Environmental Design Group regarding those questions. Michelle's comments were focused on that primarily. She was very clear that this Phase 1 was really focused on the market analysis. It is very different than the Phase 2 project will be or would be. She addressed that the need to participate in the International Council of Shopping Centers would be a decision that could come much later and simply an option that was mentioned. Certainly no requirement to do that. Another question about the Community Improvement District service. Sylvania did have a Community Improvement District at one point. Administration is not as opposed to having one in the future. There were quite a few questions about walkability scores and what that meant. She went into some detail explaining to us how those things were developed and measured. And she did say that there was interest expressed by council members the downtown footprint could be expanded to include Burnham Park, Whetstone Park, and some other areas, and she was not opposed to that. She would take a look at those things. Also discussion about how we might ensure connectivity with TARDA as that plan takes shape surfaced. There was discussion about the space behind the library as well as Summit Street and how to best maximize that space. Michelle did indicate that these questions are related to the phase 2 analysis primarily, so she had detail on those things. But she certainly did say that phase 2 discussion would look at infill opportunities and would consider public-private partnership opportunities. She shared that once phase 2 is authorized, it would take 2 to 4 months to complete. She did mention that we should be aware of and looking into community development block grant opportunities as well as stimulus to ODOT that might add some financial benefits to the next steps. And actually the next steps include a discussion among city council members and a decision regarding whether to advance to phase 2. And the meeting was adjourned at 2 o'clock. Couple follow-up things, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Sanford did submit and to everybody and present the cleaned up copy of the downtown plan. The original one was avoided a few of the things that needed to be cleaned up. Mr. Sanford did provide a copy of that to all council members in advance, and I do think she's got hard copies for those members of council members on Zoom. Okay. Also, I did want to make a request for if you would consider pushing back out to all council members the actual report that had the phase 1 and Senate, that would be helpful. I did have the opportunity to talk with council members, Mr. Mayor, and I do feel like we are ready to request administration to prepare legislation for phase 2, and I'd like to make a motion to that effect. So I move that that administration move forward with preparation of legislation for phase 2 of the environmental design group plan.
Second. All right, discussion. Mr. Schroyer, we included this in the budget.
Yes, we did.
The current phase was in last year's budget. This new phase would be in this year's budget.
Correct.
But we will bring back, we'll vote on your motion and we'll bring back that ordinance for our next meeting. So I believe it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion to prepare legislation indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we will have that on your agenda for June 1st. Agenda item A2 has already been handled earlier in the meeting as 4A. Then to 17B, an update from the Employee and Community Relations Committee of their meeting held on May 11th. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the committee met on May 11th to discuss the 2021 city calendar. We reviewed the 4 bids we received. The committee, we decided we wanted to hear more details in person or over Zoom, rather, from Flanders and Fuller about their potential design work. We would like to set another meeting to do that. I've spoken with them, and they are, and I've spoken to most members of the committee. We were looking to schedule another meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. If that's good for the members of the committee. I think I heard from Katie and Doug. Brian, does that work for you?
Which
Thursday at 5:30?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion in a second, but we decided to hear from them more, and then the committee also wanted to hear from Aero Printing about the possibility of them being the ones to do the actual printing of the calendars, because their cost for the printing came in what other people would have to do, other third-party printing. So we're exploring those options, and we will see. With that motion, I'll move to schedule a employee community relations Thursday, 21st, May 21st at 5:30 p.m. This will be a virtual meeting held on Zoom. I'll send out the link to those who need it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to schedule a employee and community relations for this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. All in favor? Saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then the clerk is ordered to post that meeting.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports to be made at this time? Agenda item 18 on the third pages of our agenda. Any committee referrals? Hearing none, there are some information on DNC. We've already talked about some bank statements. You can contact Mr. Schroyer if you have any questions. There's no further business. I call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. It's adjourned until the next meeting on Monday, 2020 at 7:30. Thank you all for attending and taking care of